We'll just wait for 5 more minutes before we start the session. All right. We are waiting for a few more to join. So I hope everyone is able to listen to my voice. If any issues, just let me know. All right. I hope everyone is able to see the screen, and I hope there's no difficulty in the audio as well. All right. So just in case if you have any questions, or in case if you have any technical problem, just let me know. We will sort it out at this point. All right. All right. So hi everyone. I am Mahesh. I'm having almost 11 years of experience in the testing area. It includes ETL testing as well as manual, and currently from last 3 years I'm also doing the security testing. So I am safely assuming that many of us know the basics of manual testing concepts, okay, and a fair idea on what is the need of security testing. Now, the aim of this particular course is to just let you know what is the security testing and how is it a bit different to the manual testing which we do in a regular day-to-day life activities. All right. So now, on a high level, right? Any web application or any application on a high level will be having a client as well as a server. Okay, so it's the interaction between the clients and the server which will fetch the information from in the front end. So we have many front end applications, and these are all the back end applications. Now, from the system or the security testing perspective, there are we have to have a clear picture about the entire architecture, whatever it is, whether it's an web application or it's a database, or we have any SOA interfaces or any client-server architectures. Whatever is the architecture of the current project, if we have a clear idea about the entire system, we will be knowing what, when, and where we should do the security testing. Okay, so the primary emphasis or the prerequisite for any security tester is having an understanding about all the systems that are placed in the respective project architecture. So I'm assuming that people all know what a browser is, okay, what a firewall is, what actually the web server and the application server will be doing, okay. And the backend it can be a database, or it can be a code where the server where we store the code for respective applications, and any third-party applications that we interact with the in our project. Okay, so these are the major areas in any of the project architecture. Now, if you see, from the user perspective, they can be of two types. One is the legitimate user who will be using the application for his need. Okay, his purpose is straightforward. But when we come to an attacker or an hacker, he or she, the major purpose or the primary purpose for him is to break through the system and get the information that is needed. All right. Please. Okay. Now, coming back. So if you know the entire architecture, okay, now the focus for all of us is, with the lot of systems that are coming into picture, there is there's an every scope, or there's an every area that is present in the IT industry that can come under the attack. Okay, so if we highly define, we have the communication systems. It can be a wireless system or a wired system. Okay, we have databases, we have OS, we have the client softwares or the apps which we see on the front end, the network devices that are connected. It can be VPNs, routers, firewalls, etc., or the web applications or web services. During the code reviews, where we do the analysis of the code as well as the modeling or the architecture of that particular code. I mean, in the sense how the code flows. Okay, and the mobile applications. It can be of any OS. Okay, these are all the primary areas that are vulnerable to any of the security attacks. Okay, with the growing systems, it can be anything. It can be a mobile, it can be a laptop, it can be a tab, it can be an OS device, it can be a pad, or it can be even the passwords that are stored physically. So anything that is present in the IT industry, if we have a clear idea or clear understanding about the entire systems that are present, we can easily understand what a security threat is all about. Okay. So now this session is primarily focused on how security testing is different to all the other testings. It can be a system testing, it can be an integration testing, or it can be automation or performance testing. All right. Uh, Deepika, let me complete the question, the first few slides, then you will understand. Okay, so I'll answer these questions at the end. All right. I'm sorry for interrupting in the middle. So when you start thinking about the architecture or the system, that is where you will be understanding what's the purpose or what is the need of security testing. All right. Now, when we say security testing, it can be of multiple types. Okay. This particular session will primarily focus on how the types of security attacks and then the threat modeling. Okay, now when you start knowing or understanding the flow of the system, that's when you will analyze, hey, this particular area in the system is vulnerable, or this particular system is having leaks. Now if you start doing it in a mapping way, you start mapping the flow, then you will understand, or if you start creating a flow diagram, then you will understand threats, the areas where we can have an issue also, right? So that's the threat modeling. So this particular training will help you in doing the threat modeling, the areas where security attack will happen, and how do you mitigate that particular issue. All right. Now, so we have general analogies or general concepts which we discussed during these training. Okay, the first and foremost thing is threat. As the threat is nothing but it's a potential event which will happen because of an unwanted what do you say attack to the system. In the sense, the primary purpose of the system is overlooked, or the reason for entering into the system is in order to steal some data or in order to do some virus attacks. So that is called as a threat. Now vulnerability is nothing but the weakness in the system. Okay, because of the weakness in the system, a threat arises. All right, and attack is nothing but the motive of that particular person or the attacker or the hacker. And asset is something which is present in your system. It can be a database application, it can be a web server, it can be a browser that is interacting with your system, or it can be an app that is interacting with your system. So something which is physically or something which is not physical also can be named as an asset. Now a fault or failure, these are all the fault or failure is the regular testing terminology. All right. Now, based on these analogies and based on the areas of under attack, right, the security testing is primarily classified into four different types. Okay, security attacks. The first and foremost thing is dependencies. Dependencies can be anything. It can be your system. It can be your what do you say, the front end application, or anything that is present in your system. is vulnerable to attacks, right? So that's your dependency. Okay. So when you start classifying the types of attacks, then you will understand the areas of testing. So that's the most primary intention of this particular slide. Now, the second class of security attack is the unanticipated user input, which means you have few characteristics or something like in your password. So simple example to understand this is your password accepts only 14 characteristics. It cannot accept a special characteristics like, say suppose it doesn't accept dollar symbol. Now, if you start giving dollar symbol in your system and it is able to log in into your system, that's something which is wrong. We may say it as not a security issue, but if we can say it as a functional issue. But from the security testing perspective, this is this input is not actually intended to be present in your system. Okay, you may never know because of these special characteristics. Okay, the combination of passwords may be known to the people or to the attacker. Okay. Now, when we have a detailed discussion in the coming classes, right, we will just give a simple example on how a password special characteristic will be vulnerable to or will it make us to enter into some system. Okay. And then another simple example is there's a boundary set. Say suppose 14 characteristics is the limit for your password. Now say suppose instead of that you just entered 3 characteristics. Okay. Now we didn't set any minimum number of characteristics for this password. Now because of 3, how many possibilities can be there for password if it's only if it is entered only 3 characteristics? 3 into 2, there is only 6 combinations are there. Sorry, 8 combinations will be there. So 8 combinations in your keypad, there are almost 60 keys in your keypad. 60 into 8 is 480 combinations. So there are 480 combinations where your password can be easily known, right? So that's the simple example of knowing uh, the boundary values that will help us in doing the security testing. All right. Now the third one is the design vulnerabilities. Say suppose your web application here is allowing you to have some 30 to 40 connections in a given point of time. Okay. Now, if suppose 30 connections are completed, the 31st connection should be kept on hold, or it should be kept in the pipeline. So instead of that, if it is still allowing you the 31st port or the 31st connection, that means there's some issue with that particular server, right? So it means instead of limiting it the number of connections to that particular server, it is allowing more connections. From performance standpoint, it's an issue. From security purpose, it should actually have kept it in queue, but still it is accepting the connection, which means something is wrong, right? So that's the other way of saying the design vulnerabilities. All right. And the implementation vulnerabilities. This is the most important thing that any developer or from the code perspective, which will expose the data. See, suppose we store the log files once a connection is completed. Now, in the log file, what should be the data that should be present is defined by the developers. Okay, so say simple example, there's a web connection, third party is coming into a system and keeping some data. Okay, say suppose if you take a banking sector, if any home loan or a personal loan is taken from the bank, there are third party vendors who actually help the bank in getting these leads. Now the data of these leads is coming from third party application, and this is stored in the respective bank's database. Now there is a connection from the third party application to this bank database. Now say suppose this particular information, say that on this particular day this particular data has been copied into this particular database. There will be a log file that is generated. Now in the log file, what should be the data present? It should only say that, hey, this particular number of leads are copied into this database on this date. This is the only information that should be present in the log file. Now, instead of having this data, we have an additional data like what is the username and password that is given in order to have access to this particular database. If we keep that data in the log file, right, there's every chance that whoever will be accessing or having access to this log files, they will be knowing the username and password, and they can access the system at any point of time, right? So that's the implementation vulnerabilities. Now, in the coming classes, right, we will have an in-depth detail or in-depth discussion on all these four areas. Now, when I said threat modeling, right, so threat modeling is something which will come from the implementation vulnerabilities. So say suppose the general flow of application is, I will enter some data in the browser. Okay, this data comes through my firewall. Okay, and then is stored in say database. This is a simple flow. I'm just giving a simple flow, right? So now at a given point, at every point there are validation checks. So here we have few checks like mandatory fields are there, right? So this is one check, and then we have the limits or the length description or length limits we have set here. So this is one what do you say one design level limitation you are setting in the front end itself. Now if you take this simple example, there's a mandatory field. Now when it goes through the firewall, right, it will have all these checks whether the mandatory fields are given. If they are not given, it will not accept at all. Okay, at the firewall stage itself it will stop. Now if the mandatory fields are given, or whether the lengths are or all others are complied, right, then it will go into the database and is stored. All right, so once it is stored, it will check whether the person who is intended to add this particular data, so add, modify or delete, whether this particular permissions are present in order for the user who enters the data in the browser can edit or add or modify in the respective database tables, right? So if this particular flow or the conditions are known, you can design the threat model. Okay, you create your flow diagrams or stride diagrams or DFD diagrams, and then you will understand, hey, this particular area in the application doesn't have any security. Now, if I directly know the login credentials, or if I know the password of this particular section, I may or may not be able to have control on firewall or have control on the browser. Okay, so that's how creating your own model or understanding the architecture based on the understanding of your architecture. If you create the threat model, then there's an every possibility of the security breach, right? So this particular session or security training will help you in doing this threat. How do you do the threat modeling, and how do you know the security vulnerabilities? All right. So far, any questions, please? So Deepika was asking what type of security you can cover, OS, network and an application. This particular training will have a complete end-to-end. See, we will give you a brief description on how do you do the OS level security, how do you do the application level security testing, how do you do the network level testing. Okay. Uh, based on the need in the live project which we will be having after this session or after this particular training, we will then focus on any of these areas. But at this point, this particular training will help you know what are all the areas that will happen. Okay. The security tools that we will be using, we have a burp tool actually, which we will be using. Okay, so that's more on the vulnerability testing. There are many areas in this testing, so that's the reason. Once you have a complete understanding, at the end of the session, you will be knowing which areas and which tool will be more implemented, or which areas, which tool can be implemented. So I don't just want to jump to the end, but I'll answer this question at the end of the session. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So before we go into the next slides, right? So I just wanted to reiterate back. See, anything that you see, even a simple example is when you start entering the password in your Gmail, right? It is actually hidden. It is not an open. So that itself is a part of security testing. Okay. So the basics, if you understand the architecture, if you know which are the areas that are vulnerable for attacks, that will help you in knowing what the security testing is actually all about. Okay. Yes. So in each area we have different tools. Okay. All right. So so if you take any software project, right? As I said earlier, we have the architecture of the entire system, which may or may not result in a security breach. Okay, but having an understanding of the particular application or the entire architecture will help you in knowing what are all the areas that may result in security breach. So for that, right, if you do it in a logical manner, the first and foremost thing for any security tester is you need to gather the complete information, the, the complete system flow. So if you take this simple example, Gmail will have an URL, okay, and then when you click on that URL, it will ask for your login username and password. Now username should be at least 10 characteristics, and then it should not take any special characteristics. Now if you see this particular example itself, you are limiting the combinations because it is not taking any special characteristics, right? So if you just go by the letters, there are 26 letters, uh, 26 small letters and 26 capital letters, right? So 52 combinations, by using 52 combinations, you can easily know what is the username, right? And when you come back to the password, if it is not having any minimum characteristics and it is having only maximum length defined, which means there can be a one letter password or two letter password. Now if it is only two letter password, then the combinations will be only four, right? 0 1 1 1 0 1 1 and 0 0, because of which there is easy way of knowing the password. So the information, so how do you know all this? If you know the complete information about the system, okay? And then is the fingerprinting. Fingerprinting is nothing but you leave a lot of traces, like the log files, or something like cache memory where your passwords are stored. So there's every possibility of you leaving the traces, right? So if you know the areas where the traces or the log files are stored, that will help you in doing the security breach or doing the there's every possibility of having the vulnerability on the system. So if you know those areas or gray areas, that will help you. The third one will be the port scan or identifying services. So if you take the any web application, right, your system will have multiple connections. Okay, just like your on a network, your server will have multiple connections using the ports, right? So if you know where this server is, what is the host IP address and the port where it is stored, there's every possibility of gaining access to that. So understanding the concepts of port, the concept of protocols, or the concept of URL, and the concepts of IP config, you will know uh, how do you include into your system. And then the different types of services like web services are there, and then the third party integrations are there. So how a third party application will be gaining access to your system. So if you know and have an understanding on identifying these services, it will help you. Okay, and then doing the vulnerability scan. So you know the entire architecture, and you will know that, hey, this particular system doesn't have the security, or it doesn't have the uh, what do you say, reverse engineering. It's like, so suppose the database is connected to your front end application, and there is no firewall in the in between. Okay, so there's an every chance of having intrusion into this particular system. So if you know how do you do that vulnerability analysis, then it's easy of doing security testing. Now, exploiting that particular known vulnerability. Say suppose I know the password of a person, maybe because of personal relationship with that person. He gave his or her password. Now, every time he or he may not have access to that particular database. It may be having access through OTP plus password. Now, OTP will be one-time password, which will be generated through on the fly, either on the mobile or any LDAP password authentication key device that is present with the actual person. Now, say suppose the OTP is just a 4-digit OTP, and you know the password. Now, there's every possibility of matching that particular OTP as well as password. Now, password is already known to you, but the OTP is something which you don't know. But there's every possibility that the probability of getting that correct OTP, there's a possibility, right? So that's how you do the exploitation on the known vulnerability areas. Okay, and the fourth one is the password, and that is already discussed, right? So these are all the areas which will help you in doing the security testing. Now, well, let's map this to your regular testing STLC process. So, during the requirements or the use case stage itself, we will be knowing what are all the security requirements, right? So, which areas you will need to do your security analysis. So, we will define the security level use cases or requirements in the requirement stage itself. Again, for this, we need to have a complete understanding on the system architecture. I'm reiterating this point again and again. Now, there's risk analysis. Risk analysis can be of any types, like architecture risk analysis, or it can be the system level risk, or it can be the person level or the end user level risk, or it can be the network level risk. Okay, this can be of any type. Okay, so during the requirement and the architecture design phase itself, you will be knowing what are all the areas where you have a risk or where you have a security breach. Okay, and there are abusive cases where simple example for you for of an abusive cases. Say suppose you are doing a fund transfer, okay, and there's a back button on the browser as well as a back button on your application. Now, ideally, which button we should use? We should use the application back button, not the browser back button. Now, if you start using browser back button, right, the cache holds the passwords already, right? Now, say suppose you have done your fund transfer and just came out, okay? Still the browser session is active. So if you click on back, right, it will take you back into the application because the password is still stored there. So this is one abusive case, right? I'm just giving a simple example for you. So this particular back button should be disabled in your web application. So saying that if you use the browser back button, it should say that, hey, this particular action is not valid. So I'm just signing out of the application. So if you want to use the application again, just log in and come back to this particular page. So this level of code, what do you say, code level security has to be written. All right. Now, when we say risk-based security test during the test plan, this is the, what do you say, arguable case actually in any of software project. People say that how can we write a security test cases during the test plan? Now, simple example is, I know a person or a tester who have a complete understanding on the banking domain. Okay. Now, say suppose he has an understanding on the requirement, okay, or he doesn't have an understanding on the requirement. Now, when he will create a test plan, right, he will be knowing I may or may not, I may require 5 days of testing for the complete application, which includes both system security testing as well as the functional testing. Now, because of the time limitation, if he has cut down that particular time for security testing, that's a risk, right? So that's what risk-based security test is during the test plan. Okay, and code review, as I said, it's more of white box security testing, where a simple example to be defined. As I said earlier, right? If you have the back button if you use the back button on the browser, and if it is still active, I mean, if you don't have any checks on that, or if you say that if you don't have a code level, what do you say, stopping of that particular back button, then it's an issue, right? So during the code review also you will be doing it. For this, you need to have an understanding about the programming language that is written for that particular application. Okay, it can be SQL, it can be a Java code, or it can be anything else. All right. Now, test and test results. This is also one area where risk analysis comes. Again, see, suppose during that point, a person who doesn't know about the application is doing the testing. Okay, so how can we make sure that how can we make sure that the testing that is done is complete? We may or may not, right? So here both the functional as well as security testing comes into place. So risk analysis is also should be done at the testing and testing results. What do you say? The dashboard that is created, where you say that, hey, this test results or this testing has been completed. Okay, so security testing is done at this particular stage also. Now, the most important thing is the penetration testing. Penetration testing and security testing looks alike, okay? But the only primary difference is penetration testing is to what level of the system you will go or you will breach, okay? This is more on penetration testing. This may or may not result in the purpose of the hacker, okay? The purpose of the hacker is to fetch the complete data. Okay. Now, in order to fetch the data that is present in the database, he has to go through the firewall, the web server, the application server, and then he will come into the database, right? So, if he could penetrate till the web server, still he is not having access to the entire data. So that's more on the penetration testing. That's the primary difference. All right. Uh, so far, any questions? Yes, both will be covered. So Abhijit is asking the difference between security testing and penetration testing. See, at this point, right, it may be confusing if I give more examples. But from the on a high level perspective, both may look simple, or both may look alike. But there's a lot of difference between security testing and penetration testing. And in this particular course, we'll cover both of these. All right. Okay. Okay, so Deepthi is asking to explain the difference between the security testing and penetration testing. Okay, so penetration is more of the black box testing. Okay, where you will try to break the server. You may or may not be successful in getting the complete data, but you will try to get into the system where you will be knowing the entire flow of the system. See, knowing the flow of the system, knowing the actual data is two different things, right? So penetration testing is you will be doing or you will be trying to know the complete system flow. So that's more on the penetration testing. Okay. So security testing has penetration testing also in it. Okay. But the what do you say? You will get the intended information. You may or may not get the intended information in the penetration testing. All right. But to reiterate, it's a part of or it's a type of security testing. All right. Hope it answered your question. Uh, from okay. Do you cover how to catch network trafficking using tools? Will be showing car details. No, at this point, Abid, we will not. We will not be having that particular discussion. But again, I'm reiterating. We will try to. We will let you know how do you do that. Okay. But from the tool point, no, sorry, we will not. We will not be showing you that. All right. So now, saying this right, so from the manual testing perspective, we always know that there's an every need of automation tools, right? So even for security testing also, right? Not all the while doing the manual testing will help you. So, okay, there will be many areas where you may not directly go into the respective server or the database. You may not breach into that. So instead of that, if you use an automated tool, which we generally say security testing tools, that will help you in getting the results very faster. So simple example is, I know that the password is of the password entered is only of 3 characteristics. Now the number of combinations that you will get because of these 3 characteristics is somewhere near to 2000 or say some 3000. When you start entering all these 3000 combinations, right, it takes a lot of time. Instead of that, if you use a tool which will do all these 3000 combinations at one go, that will save a lot of time, right? Because security testing or the penetration testing that we are discussing, right, it needs a lot of effort, time, patience to know the or breach into the particular system or the application, right? So if you do it automated way, that will help you in getting the results faster. Okay, so that's where the need of tools is required. Okay, so in the market, right, based on the type of security testing, we have a lot of applications. So in the information gathering, we have Skipfish, and then Maltego, Robo. All these are the information gathering, which will help you in knowing the system flow. Okay, from the network or the port way, we have Nmap, Netcat, Traceroute, Superscan. This will help you in knowing the end server port details or the IP configuration details. Okay, and and a combination of information gathering, the proxies and password characters, you can have an access into that particular server. All right, and the packet analysis or sniffers. So as I said earlier, right, if you start sending any data through through the browser to the web application, right, it's generally in the form of packets, right? Any network, it happens to the packets. So if you know how the system flows, okay, and if you want to do security testing at the packets level, so we have Kismet. Okay, and then a network miner is there. So these two are popular in that particular area. And then from vulnerability scanning or vulnerability testing, burp suit. This one is the what do you say? This one is the most popular tool in the world. Okay, and then there's IBM AppScan is also there, which will help you in doing the vulnerability, which will help you in the gray areas of any complete architecture or any product architecture. And then add-ons. Add-ons is more on the say suppose you have the PDF reader, right? PDF reader in your web application, you may or may not have the Adobe installed, right? So when you try to install Adobe, there's an every possibility that Adobe in itself may come up with some viruses. This is one add-on to your web application, right? So that's where you can even hack getting the information. So PDF reader may read your entire data and may store it in some place, and from that you can read the complete data that is present in your PDF file. Okay. So that's how you do the that's how the add-ons may be vulnerable for security. So how do you test that is, we have no script, and then there's this hack bar, which is also very good tool. So this will help you in doing that particular level of security testing. And the proxies are the most important thing worldwide. Say suppose a simple example is Netgear allows you to, or Netflix allows you to have subscriptions in your respective countries. There's no worldwide subscription. Simple example is. So people in India can watch US movies, or people in US can watch serials or movies of India in the US, right? This can be done by using proxies. So this is where but just by knowing the username and password, you can access the entire Netflix database, right? So that's one simple use of having proxies. And the most commonly used is the Facebook proxies, which we use in our offices, because many of the offices doesn't support Facebook, right, or YouTube. So we will be using proxies in order to access that. So how do you test using the proxies? So one such one is IE Watch and Charles. These two are good tools for doing the proxy level testing. Okay, and the exploitation. This is the most important thing in doing the security testing, where you know that any system or any application will have a database, and all the data will be stored in the database itself, right? So having a knowledge on database concepts and having a knowledge about the database schema will help you in getting the complete information. So SQL map, SQL injections, all this will SQL injections are something like which will you will write an blind SQL stating that you will just anticipate what could be the table by looking at the logs or by looking at the proxies. You may get an idea or fair idea about the list of tables that are present in the system. So using SQL injections, you can find the leakages. Okay, so that's more on the exploitation. So we have multiple tools like Harvey's and then SQL Map. These two are very good tools on the exploitation, mostly on the database level. Okay, and for password crackers, n number of tools are there. One such tool is Brutus. This will help you in getting the passwords. Again, as I said, right, less the combinations or less the characteristics in the password, the more the chance of getting identifying the passwords easily. So the combinations or the combinations based on the type of security that is given for the password, these tools will help you in getting the data. All right. Now, from the industry perspective, right, because of these data breaches, right, there's a lot of money that's getting wasted. So if you see from last year, almost $7.2 million was wasted because of these data breach. And from the testing perspective, a given complete system, in order to do the complete security testing, it actually takes 80 days to do the complete security testing, and an average 123 days to fix them. So if you see, there's a lot of money that is flowing into the system or the project management because of the security testing. So if you see this, or if you look into these analysis, right, this will help you in giving in getting a clear picture about the need of security testing and the need of security testing professionals or the ethical hackers. Okay, and from the project management perspective, finding a security defect at the development phase itself is very will result in will result in less cost for finding that particular defect. From even from the manual testing perspective also, right, finding a defect in the requirements analysis stages, very little, or the cost incurred in finding the defect is very little during the requirement analysis than in the production, right? So the same applies for the security testing also. So that's the reason, by seeing the average cost, there's a lot of money that's going for each defect. So understanding, so for all this, right, the primary focus will be understanding the architecture that is under test. That's where you will know the complete way of doing the security testing. All right. Okay. So I am actually done for the day. Mm, from the coming classes, right, we will have a detailed description on all these areas. Okay. We'll take a tour. We'll let you know how to do it. We will let you know what the protocol is all about. We will let you know the A to Z analogies that are present in security testing. Okay. As I said in this what do you say in the previous slide, right? We'll take burp suit for doing the entire what do you say each areas. Burp suit will have burp suit came up with all these areas, so it came up with its own solutions for all these areas. Okay. Earlier it was more on vulnerability scanning. It had only professional scanner, but now the entire suite came up with all these areas where it can test in all these areas. But again, we will let you know how do you do that. Okay. Abid is asking how many hours of this training. So Abid, this will be a 20 hours training. Okay, it depends on the speed of the training also. All right, and the list of certifications, right? We have many actually, but I'll let you know in the next session. Okay, I'll just give a complete glimpse on what are the various security testing certifications we have. At this point, we are not having any plan to help you on the certifications part, but going forward, right, if the need arises, will help you in doing that. All right. Yeah, the timing is fixed, right? If you have any issues with the timing, right, just let us know. So we'll try to answer them. Yes, Avid. This testing, I mean, as I said earlier, right, if you see the metrics of the amount that is going on an average for any data breach, it's a huge amount, right? $7.2 million. At this point, it may look very simple, but going forward, there's a lot of applications that will come under scan, because more and more hackers are coming into picture. More and more people are trying to access or finding the security breaches. So there's a need of R for the security testers. At this point, they're limited in numbers actually. Uh, that's a tricky part. With no experience, we cannot say that people will not get the job. But people having an understanding on the areas or the areas that are vulnerable for security breaches, if you have a fair understanding on that, you can get a job, and certifications will also help you in it. But again, It's more on going to that level how an hacker will think. Okay, and having patience to get the what do you say, having a patience in order to get the passwords or knowing the vulnerable areas is a time taking process. So writing test cases for that is a tricky part. 20 hours of training is very less. it, I don't think so. It is more than enough. But from the tool point, right, we'll try to add few more going forward. And again, 20 hours, we are not limiting ourselves to 20 hours. If we feel that people are not understanding, we will extend it. It may go to 30, 40 hours also. But we are not confining ourselves for 20 hours of training. All right. Okay. Any other questions, please? Uh, do you cover the different network? I mean, I didn't understand the question again. Oh, all right. So, okay. So this is not more on the type of networks. We will let you know how on a common basis. Like, see, we will not say that Windows based or Unix based or Linux based. It's more on it's independent of the network. All right. Don't. I mean, please don't panic on the type of network that will be used. All right, it's in a general way how or whatever. See, that will be more on white box testing again. Okay, this the testing or the class which will letting you know, right? It's more on the black box level. It's independent of the type of network. All right, it's more of OS again. Abid, you are saying more on the OS part actually. Okay, what's the first level certificate? There are many certifications actually. CSTA, Certified Security Testing Associate. That's the primary, and the most worldwide known as CPTC, Certified Penetration Testing Consultant. Okay, there are others also like CPT, CompTIA, GPEN, OSCP. Okay, but from what do you say, from there are many companies which have a different level of certification need. Few need CPTC, few need CSTA. CSTA is a widely known certification. Anjum is asking, do we require any programming as a prerequisite? No, 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 not needed actually. Okay, but it is better to know the what do you say, have an understanding on the programming language, at least the logic level at least. Because simple example is, as I said earlier, in the password section, if the minimum characteristics is given only 3, that's again a wrong, right? And there's a classic example in real time in one of the banks in US, Bank of America, I suppose. There was a case where a person gave 0.01% of each transaction will go into his personal account. Okay, because of the magnitude, or because the amount was very little, during the testing phase it was not found. Okay, had they seen the code, right, they could have found it, because generally rounding off will happen in the real time, right? So 0.01% of $100 is how much? It's just 1 cent itself. Now when you have a rounding off mentioned in there, people will see that $100 have been transferred to the other account. But in real time, 1 cent is lost and 1 cent is sent to some other person, some other's savings account or some other's account. Now, if you take millions of dollars of such transactions, because in real time many people will transfer, say suppose $1 million, of which 0.01% is somewhere near to 100 to $1,000, right? That's the amount that is lost, which you will know only when you see the code. You may or may not know the programming language, but you know the logic, right? So that will help you. So there's no prerequisite as such. Alright. 20 hours is not enough, frankly speaking, but at this point, too much depth is also not needed. We'll go step by step actually. Okay, but again, going forward, we will do that. If people are not that happy or people are not satisfied with the amount of content which we give, we will try to extend it. All right. Again, I'm saying you right. See, okay, coming back, let me show you one section. Now, if you see, these are the 8 areas in your security testing, right? We cannot do the complete in-depth analysis on this code scanning or on the password characters, but we will be letting you know how do you write test cases in all these areas and how do you test in all these areas. But in-depth or advanced, we will cover it in the coming classes, not at this point of time. All right. Yeah, OAS tools are also in demand actually. No, OAS is like the concept actually. It's like some standards that are set onto the system. Okay, that will be covered in the coming classes. Yes, it's very much part of the training. Yes, Anjum, the class will be of same time. If you have any issues with the time, right, just let us know. We'll try to what do you say, change accordingly. Okay. All right. All right. So any other questions, please? Where is the OS scanning? OS level scanning will happen. It's a part of all these, right? It's part of exploitation. It's part of passwords. It's part of information gathering. It's just a combination of all this. See, we have classified. It, this particular slide is classified based on the high level types. All right. The first class day after tomorrow is day one, and on Thursday is the day two. And from next week the actual classes starts. So this three classes are free classes, the orientation and the day one, day two sessions. All right. Nmap is something which covers the OS scanning, the Pitha just for your information. So this tool Nmap. Okay. Nmap will cover the OS level security, OS level testing. All right. All right. Any other questions, please? All right. Looks like there are no other questions. What are the timings? Timings are the same timings actually, Abhi. Okay. Deepika is asking what are the add-ons, what is add-ons. So as I said, right, any web application, if you have a PDF reader, okay, so that's an add-on to your application, right? It's a third-party add-on to your system, right? So PDF reader may read the what is it, this entire system. PDF reader is your client actually for the end user, but it will have connections to your database where it will fetch the data and show it in the front end. So that's an add-on to your project or to the application, web application. Now, there's an every chance that PDF reader may read the data on your system, right? And that will be stored as the logs in the respective system. So that is also, there's an every chance of security breach in that, right? So that's a simple example of add-ons.